We are now live. The meeting of the City of Socorro Planning and Zoning Commission is set to begin. First and foremost, the City of Socorro would like to thank everyone and ask for your patience during this difficult time we have been presented with.
Unmuted.
Everyone, please remember to silence any electronics to avoid sound interruption. No disruptive behavior or outbursts will be tolerated, and violators are subject to call disconnection and possible prosecution. In accordance with Section 418.016 of the Texas Government Code and by order of the Office of the Governor issued March 16, 2020, the Planning and Zoning Commission of the City of Socorro will broadcast the meeting scheduled today, Tuesday, August 18, 2020 at 5:30 from City Hall Chambers located at 860 Rio Vista Road, Socorro, Texas, via telephone conference and live stream in order to advance the public health goal and practice social distancing to slow the spread of the coronavirus COVID-19. The public that signed up and any presenters will be called upon by the presiding officer during the meeting to speak during the public comment or their agenda item during the meeting following Government Code 551.042. La reunión de la Comisión de Planificación y Zonificación de la Ciudad de Socorro está por comenzar. Primeramente queremos darles las gracias y pedimos su paciencia durante estos momentos críticos que enfrentamos. Favor de poner en silencio todo equipo electrónico para evitar interrupción de sonido. No se va a tolerar ningún tipo de comportamiento perjudicial o revoltoso. A quien no siga estas reglas, su llamada será desconectada y puede ser infraccionado. De acuerdo con sección 418.016 del Código del Gobierno de Texas y por orden de la Oficina del Gobernador, anunciada el 16 de marzo de 2020, la Comisión de Planificación y Zonificación de la Ciudad de Socorro transmitirá su reunión hoy 18 de agosto de 2020 a las 5:30 p.m. desde la Sala del Concilio localizada en 860 Rio Vista Road, Socorro, Texas, por medio de teléfono y será transmitida en vivo para tomar medidas preventivas para prevenir la propagación de la enfermedad del virus corona COVID-19 a los demás y por la seguridad del público. El público y los presentadores serán anunciados por el oficial conduciendo la reunión para poder hablar durante la sección de comentario público o después de la discusión del artículo de la agenda por cual se apuntaron siguiendo las reglas del gobierno 551.042. Okay, Mr. Cisneros.
Hi, good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting into August 18th meeting to order. There is a quorum established.
The time, sir?
I guess we'll take a roll call at this time
Sir, can I have the time, please?
at 4:37.
5:30.
Excuse me, 5:37.
Okay, thank you.
My apologies.
Item number 2, establishment of quorum. Mr. Ernest Gomez? Mr. David Estrada?
Present.
Mr. Arturo Lafuente?
Here.
Mr. Andrew Arroyos? Mr. Enrique Cisneros?
Present.
We have quorum with 3 commissioners present. Item number 3, notice to the public, open forum.
Is there anybody signed up to speak?
There is no public signed up to speak, sir.
Item
Very
number,
good. So what?
item number 4, consent agenda.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. The only thing I noticed on the meeting minutes for consent agenda.
Mr. Terrazas, you muted yourself, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. That was the only thing that I noticed. Mr. Estrada's name is misspelled on the meeting minutes. Everything else looks good.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the correction of Mr. David Estrada's name.
I second.
have a
There's a motion
motion,
on the table.
I'm sorry. I have a motion made by Enrique Cisneros to approve. With a correction, Joe named.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
second by Mr. David Estrada. Mr. David Estrada,
Yes.
Mr. Arturo Lafuente,
Yes.
and Mr. Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carried with all commissioners in favor. Item number 5, preliminary plat approval. Consider and take action on the preliminary plat approval for Estancias del Parral subdivision, being tracks 19B and 20B, Block 13, Socorro grant for a new development.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is an application for a new subdivision. This subdivision is Estancias del Parral. I'm gonna share my screen so you can see the property that is proposed to be subdivided. Property is located off of Asmore, real close to Campestre Elementary School. This is Socorro Road, Asmore, and this is a property they're trying to subdivide. This property is about 2,500 feet easterly from Socorro Road. It has approximately 860,746 square feet. That's a total of 19.76 acres. It's owned by Asmore Development. This property was already presented in the past. The subdivision was approved. However, City of Socorro signed off on the dedication block and everything. It was never recorded. That's the reason why they have to start all over with the new application. So they're coming back to the board. According to the flood insurance rate maps, this property is located in Zone X. The new subdivision will have about 93 residential lots. They're all classified R2. I'm gonna show you the preliminary plat. What you see on the screen here is the preliminary plat. It has 93 residential lots, 1 ponding area. It will have 2 roadways that will have access directly to Asmore Road. One of the things that we requested from this developer is that they dedicate additional right-of-way for the expansion of Asmore Road. As you can see on this plat, they're dedicating an additional 30 feet for the widening of the road. However, because they were affected, these 2 streets, the 2 little streets that you see here in the middle, San Jose and Mercy Reyes, they would have to reduce the right-of-way. So they're asking for a variance in order to accommodate additional right-of-way dedicated for Asmore. 2 streets will have to be reduced to 52 feet. This is how they're proposing the subdivision. There's a stub out that connects to another subdivision that's also recorded, but it was never developed. Let me go back to the aerial map so that I can show you the area that is abutting this subdivision is the one you see here on the screen. This is a subdivision that's recorded. So there's a stub out that is proposed that will connect to an existing roadway on the site. It will have a total of 5 streets, 1 pond, and a 30-foot right-of-way dedication. The Planning and Zoning Department is recommending approval with the following conditions. The developer still needs to provide soil analysis reports, traffic impact analysis, development of the schedule. development schedule, the covenants and restrictions, and the proposed construction schedule. Do you have any questions about this subdivision?
Who was responsible for recording back in '08?
So the person responsible for recording is the developer. When they brought this to city council and it got approved, it's our responsibility to get all the signatures to include the mayor. And then let me show you the plat that was recorded in the past. So you can see that this plat was already recorded. It used to be called Estancia del Parral. And as you can see, they already had all the signatures that were required from the city. But then the developer had to go back to the county and record the final section of the block. It never happened, so this plat expired. The other thing that is different is, for some reason on this plat, we're presenting a temporary road in the back of the property. And on the new preliminary plat, this road is no more. Let me put the plat again on the screen so you can see it. As you can see, this is how they're proposing the new plat. Do you have any questions?
Was this plat, does this developer have any other properties that they're developing?
I am not aware of any other property owned by Asmore Development. This is the only thing that we're aware that they have. If we knew that they had more land surrounding this development, we would have asked for a master plan. But we don't know if they have any more property along this area.
Is the ponding area gonna be a park?
No, sir. What we're asking from them is to pay the 2.5% park fee in lieu of the park. And the reason for this is because if you look at the location of this park, there is a massive park in Jardín de Flores that is already creating a burden on the city for the purposes of maintenance and irrigation of the sod. This park is really large. After having analyzed the area, we think this park should be enough. The reason is because there's sidewalks on all this subdivision except for Asmore. Asmore hasn't been improved. In the future, we do foresee sidewalks that will be connecting directly to this park, so they can serve as walking trails. In addition, there's the Franklin Feeder Canal in the back that can also serve as a walking trail. We don't know if in the past there were any plans to construct some kind of a roadway here, because if you look at Jardín de Flores, there is a 120-foot right-of-way dedicated along the Franklin Feeder. So we don't know if that was the reason why there was a temporary road recorded on the previous plat. But at the moment, I cannot tell you for sure that there will be a roadway here in the future. For that reason, we're asking for them to pay the 2.5% park fee in lieu of the park.
And the way that it's platted right now, or what we're looking at, would there still be enough space to make that road in the future?
Well, as you can see, the way it's platted right there.
Yeah.
So it's abutting the Franklin Feeder.
Yeah.
Before we can say for sure there will be a roadway here, several things need to happen, to include environmental clearance and other studies that need to happen before this can be presented as a formal roadway. We don't even know if, at this time, we don't know if the Franklin Feeder will be a good place or if it'll be suitable for a roadway in the future.
Yeah.
Something that we don't know at the moment.
Mhm. But you mentioned that the Jardín de Flores development, they left that huge abutment. Would that continue the same under this development, or would, I guess I don't know if I'm explaining myself correctly.
Yes, so
The
that's,
Jardín,
yes. I know
It's a
what you mean. That's a question that we have asked ourselves because we don't have plans or anything showing reason why this was dedicated to the city. We can only assume that maybe in the past, the city was planning on having some kind of roadway or something here. But at the moment, we haven't been able to find any plans that were presented in the past.
very good. But my question is the way that I'm looking at it, if in the future, hypothetically speaking, there was enough roadway and there was enough funds, the way that it's being platted, it would end at Passmore, it wouldn't continue on the other side of Passmore, right?
Yes,
have a quick-
yes, I think I understand your question. Yes,
Okay.
that's correct. Yes.
I have a question.
The other,
Is the park to the new development is considered also as a ponding area or just the park?
I'm sorry, Mr. LaFuente, I couldn't understand your question. Can you say it again?
On the existing park that you said that is next to it, let's say like a 2 blocks or 1 block, the existing park,
Yes.
is that park considered as a ponding area or also is only
Okay.
only
Yes, it's both. It's a ponding area and it's also a park. It has, it's been used as a soccer field. There's also some playgrounds on both ends. You can see it's fully equipped. And that's the reason why you see the flumes on the corners, because it's also being used as a pond. So it's a combination of park pond. It's all open space. And this park has been formally accepted by the city. It's called Jardín de Flores Park.
how deep is the park on the lower part?
I don't
The
have
lower
that
end.
information. I think it's like 6 or 7 feet. I don't have that information today.
I mean, is that is a park, there's some activity schedule, any date, if that rate comes, so they will cancel those activities, right? Because the water.
Yes, correct. So as you can see, this is the park that I'm talking about. It's
Oh,
completely covered in sod. It has trees. It has the playgrounds that you see on the ends.
mhm.
And here's the roadway that leads. As you can see, there's sidewalks. This is obviously an old picture, but there's sidewalks on both sides of the road. And these sidewalks will connect all the way to Asmore Road. So as you can see, it's only like a couple of, maybe about a block away from this proposed subdivision.
Mhm.
So it's in the best interest of the city to stay away from adding another park, since we already have this larger one available on Jardín de Flores.
If the new development is gonna give like 2% of the land in money, is some money destination for the park
Yes,
or nothing to build that?
yes, it'll be used for, of course, it's for the park purposes. So it'll be used either on this park or on a different one, but it will definitely be used on a park, either for maintenance or for adding equipment or whatever the city needs.
is there any
Now-
way that it, go ahead, sorry.
Now, in the new development, there's a ponding area that you said that is not, it's not gonna be designated as a park, right?
No, on the new proposed subdivision, it would only have a ponding area. And this would be strictly for drainage. It will be off limit to the public.
So it'll be covered by rock wall or
Yes.
around? Or
Yes, yes, sir. It will be
no,
covered with a rock wall and then there's a 20-foot drainage right away. This would be used for only for the maintenance crew to have access to the ponding area. So this pond would be dedicated to the city as well.
Okay, so all the street drainage is gonna concentrate in the pond.
Yes, that's correct.
Mhm. Mm,
Um, San Jose Street and Mercy Day Street, you're saying those are gonna be 30-foot wide?
No, it will be 52 feet wide. So they're asking for a variance on those two streets. Everything else has a 60-foot right of way. Except for these two little streets. After having a discussion with the engineer, we thought it was appropriate to allow them the variance since they're dedicating right away on Passmore. So the paved area from the back of the curb to the back of the curb would be 34 feet, which is something that we have done in the past in other subdivisions. And it's been working fine. We haven't had any problems with granting a variance to these measurements. So we don't foresee a problem on these two little streets.
Okay, I'm gonna reference back to the subdivisions that are going up over here on North Loop. Over by the fire station and the other one across the street between North Loop and I-10.
Okay,
So those subdivisions are under construction. There's the builders are underway. Those two subdivisions have parks already. The parks look to be complete. There's grass, there's sod, there's trees. I want to say maybe there's some I don't know, like equipment, like swings and stuff like that. But I haven't driven into those subdivisions. It's just what I can see off the North Loop. So those parks, I don't know if any families have moved in there already, but those parks are already up and running. So I'm on this subdivision. I'm wondering why there wouldn't be any parks here, and why would those other subdivisions have parks up and running? You know, so I'm thinking, you know, it's an agreement between the city and those particular developers, and so why not do the same thing on this subdivision? And the biggest thing that I'm seeing is why I would say that this subdivision would have a park is because we would be asking, these are 93 families, you know, and we're asking them to cross Passmore Street, and that's a large street. There's a lot of traffic going through there. So, you know, I don't foresee any lights, any stop signs going up right there. So you're asking people in that community to cross Passmore to go to another park. So it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't seem like a good thing to do. Plus the fact that these other subdivisions have parks up and running. Why not ask this subdivision for a park? What's the difference between the ones on North Loop and this one?
yes, that's a good question, Mr. Estrada. So let me try to explain what the city has been looking for. Because we already have a number of parks that are in very desperate need of maintenance. One of the things that we've been talking about, and this is an idea that was brought in recently, this is something that we're considering, it's something new. We've had conversations with other agencies, for example, with the Water Improvement District. You can see there's a number of laterals and canals that cross throughout the city. One of the visions that we have, and we're starting, I'm gonna just go over to this area here real quick. Since you guys are familiar with all the construction that is going on East Lake off of Nuevo Huecotanks Road. One of the visions that we have, and hopefully this will mitigate some of the burden that Public Works Department is having to face regarding the maintenance of the parks. As you can see, there's all these drains we're talking to the Water Improvement District to see if there's a way that eventually we can improve all these laterals and canals that are throughout the city and eventually create a walking trail with bike lanes and sidewalks that will connect eventually the entire city. In other words, have walking trails that wrap around the city in lieu of the park. We're asking for walking trails to be dedicated and improved by the developers. And this is a good example because the Franklin feeder runs in an angle. We're thinking that maybe in the future a walking trail would be more suitable and easier to maintain than a park. In the park, we have irrigation systems. We're spending, just on this park itself, Jardín de Flores, only in the month of June when it's the hottest, this is when we're spending over 1 million gallons of water for irrigation. That creates a burden on the city on the long run. And in lieu of the parks, we're looking at having walking trails and improve them with trees. Putting trees would take a lot less water than trying to irrigate grass. So that's the vision that we have, where the city is trying to get away from parks and eventually look more into or focus more into creating bike lanes, walking trails, etc. That's the reason why we're asking for new development to provide the 2.5% park fee. For example, here on Rio Bosque, it was presented in the past that there's, I don't know if you're familiar with Alameda. There's some walking trails that are under construction. They're coming from El Paso, City of El Paso. This is a project that is subsidized by the county. Eventually, this lane, this walking trail, was supposed to run through Rio Bosque, cross through Socorro, all the way into San Elizario. That's the reason why we're trying to get away from those parks and try to incorporate this new idea to see if we would save the city more money on the long run when it comes to maintenance. I don't know if that helped explain the reason behind trying to get away from the parks. But when those two subdivisions that you mentioned on North Loop were presented, I guess those were the last two subdivisions that we accepted that already had a park incorporated in it. It was before we came up with this idea of moving away from the parks and using bike lanes instead, or walking trails for public. One of the ideas that we also have in mind is a walking trail that is along Horizon, City of Horizon. I don't know if you've been up there, but there is a walking trail that is running on side of the, like this one right here you see on the screen. This is what the city would like to have. This is a bike lane and a walking trail. This is what we're trying to incorporate that will connect several points of interest throughout the city of Socorro. So this would allow the public to be able to walk or bike and stay within the city limit.
Where is that walking trail?
This walking trail is off of Horizon.
Oh,
Horizon,
oh yes,
right next to the golf
by
course.
the golf. Yeah, okay.
As you see it right here on the
So-
site.
Mhm, yeah.
And you
So
go
is
further
there
up, this walking trail goes all the way to East Lake. And you can still see that it's still being stretched further. And if you drive down East Lake Road, you're also gonna see the same concept on the side of the road. This
all the way down to the North Loop?
I am not sure if it runs all the way to North Loop, but East Lake, it wraps around and eventually it goes into the city limit. This is the same idea that city of Socorro would like to incorporate in the future for example, remember we presented a zoning change on this land over here. It's the exact same concept that we're asking from this developer here. Right, bike lanes. There's also Lake Valley Unit 2 that is under construction. The same thing we asked from them. There's going to be an 8-foot bike lane that's going to be to the middle of Lecter Road. So you're seeing it more and more, and we're hoping that this would be a solution to the problem of having substandard or dilapidated parks.
Mr. Terrazas, there's no way that, or let me ask it this way. Is there a way that we can allocate the funds that this developer is gonna put up to go to the park where to the Flores de Jardín, or Jardín de Flores Park, being that it's the closest and most, it's the closest to this development and likely that it's gonna add capacity to that park?
You mean the 2.5% park fees?
Yes, sir.
If there's a way to use them on this park instead?
To allocate them, or if approved, to approve them, allocating those funds to go directly to that park.
Yes, it's possible. However, keep in mind that this is not the only park that we have. I believe there's like 18 parks total. One of the ones that we are concerned about is one that was left on Cielo del Rio subdivision. This one, of course, it's in desperate need of equipment and maintenance. There's other parts, for example, here, Cielo Azul. As you can see, there's no playground, there's no sod or anything. There's only trees, a couple of canopies. Well, there's other parks that have priority. It would depend on what direction council would like to go when it comes to improving the parks. Which one would council consider having the most priority?
Very good. But we can still make the suggestion, being that
Yes.
if these 90 families, if these 90 plus families aren't gonna have a park in their development, we can try to make the park that's closest to them better. The other question I do have is, being that, this is the plot that we're looking at, it looks like the adjacent development is already, it's already been subdivided. Is there, and because the plan is to, the dream or the goal is to take advantage of these, or I guess of our natural habitat that we have, these canals, throughout that development and the one next to it and the one that's coming in the future, do we have pathways that connect those houses to the canals?
Yes, so as you can see, there's a drain right here. This is a drain that runs from one end of the city to the other. So you have this drain, you have the Franklin feeder that runs in an angle. And then there's also a lateral, I forgot the name, but there's a lateral that is nearby. So there's several places that can offer the opportunity for improvement. And I would say the most appropriate one would be this drain here. The city would be able to create a pathway all the way down to Caleb and connect the sidewalks, or continue when the widening of Asmore happens. There's going to be sidewalks on both sides of the street. So yes, there is the opportunity for connection for these residents to have access to a park.
I guess I'll phrase it a little bit differently. So on the Jardín de Flores development, there's probably 2 or 3 direct, I mean, it's close to vehicles, but it's an easy walk from the residential area to the canal. I don't see any of that here, and I don't know if there's any in the next development. But I guess if what we're aiming for is to have these canals take the place of the parks, which I think is great, maybe we can keep that in mind in the next developments to see if the developer will work with us to make easements where, and luckily, I think Asmore needs to be widened, and we're setting it up so that it is widened. So this developer's already made, an easement to the city. But I guess as we go along to new developments, we can ask them to keep that in mind to make easier access to the canals.
Yes. And then also keep in mind, this land already belongs to the city. It's substantially large. It's just 120 feet wide. It's really large. And as you can see, there's direct access through the Franklin feeder. Worst case, I mean, this also be developed as a park. I mean, there's options, there's ways of getting it done. It's just a matter of figuring out what's the best and more convenient for the city. Also keep in mind that further down on Peters Road, this is Peters Road, at the end of Peters, there's also the Mauro Rosas Park. This park was never developed. Well, there was a lot of construction going on. It stopped. And right now, this is what we have. There's basketball courts, there's playgrounds. So there's at least 2 parks that are nearby.
Yeah, and they're really nice parks. I frequent both of them. They're really good.
Yes.
I do have a question for Mr. Body, and I think it'd be best if I asked it in executive council. Being that this is the first time that the mention of executive council has come up during the video chat meetings, how would we go about that?
So we can go, yeah, we can go into executive session. You just have to make a motion for it, and then we'll have to disconnect from the, I guess, the public transmission, and then bring everybody back on. We might have done it one time before, or maybe it was another. I might have done it with city council or something, but yeah, that's the way to do it. So we'll just need help from the administration here. And if you guys are asking for somebody from city staff as well to be present, you can as well.
Mr. Body,
Very good.
my apologies, Mr. Cisneros. This is Mayela running your all's meeting. So if you are wishing to go into executive session, I will just ask you to stay on. You all can stay on the Zoom. We will disconnect from the live feed. We will mute everything and then just give us some time, and then we'll let you know when you all are in executive session, of course, with staff members and that you're requiring to stay in the meeting, and of course your secretary, because we do have to record the executive session. Is that
Very
correct,
good.
Mr. Buddy? Because that's the way we've done it at council.
Very good. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive council with Mr. Body and the secretary.
I second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Enrique Cisneros to go into executive session, second by Mr. David Estrada.
Hi, yes, ma'am. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'd like to apologize. I just joined the meeting right now. I'd like to apologize to everybody for being late. Was in a little accident, but I'm home already, and I don't know if I could still join the meeting or
Yes, sir,
just
that's
stay
fine.
at least to hear in.
And yes, sir, that's fine. And then, of course, since you're the head chair, then you would take over. But give me a moment because right now they have the motion on board. So let Claudia finish.
Okay. Is I don't know. Is there a way? I think Mr. Cisneros is head chair right now since I wasn't in. But can it stay that way since I haven't really heard anything, or do I have to?
That's fine. You can let him continue. Okay.
Okay. I can't see anything on the screen. Is that something that I'm not pushing right?
You're not seeing anything on which screen, sir?
On my screen, I can only see myself way at the bottom, but I can't, the full screen. Usually if I can't see anything else.
It might be your viewing, how you're viewing your view settings. So at the top right, you have your where it says shows your speaker view. Do you see?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so if you click on there, it's how you the selection that you have, sir.
Okay. Meeting settings, virtual background. Okay, I'm sorry. I just see the participants. So I push participants. board
Okay, so on
information,
on your speaker view, do you have your
Yes.
gallery selected? Click where it says speaker view at the top right,
Check, mute.
and you have the option to select gallery view where it has a bunch of little like it's a blue circle and then a bunch of little white dots.
Okay. Okay, now I can see everybody.
Okay. So if you all will, I'm sorry.
I'm
So
going-
we'll go ahead, we'll continue with the motion.
I'm going to repeat. I have a motion made by Mr. Enrique Cisneros to go into executive session, second by Mr. David Estrada. David Estrada,
Yes.
Arturo Lafuente,
Yes.
Andrew Arroyos,
Abstain.
Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carried with 3 yes and 1 abstain. We're going to executive session at 6:17. We are back from executive session at 6:26 p.m.
Does anybody else have any other questions for Mr. Terrazas and staff?
I'm wondering what the, that 2.5%, what does that translate into a dollar amount? More or less.
We still don't have that amount. It's something that we still need to calculate because it's, according to the ordinance, it's based on the cost of the construction. So we still don't have the cost of the construction from the developer.
Based on your experience, what, can you give us a range?
No, I wouldn't know, sir.
Like what have these developers paid in the past, for example, when this has
I
been
don't-
done?
The reason I don't recall because it's very rare that somebody would pay the 2.5%. I wouldn't feel comfortable throwing out a number and being misleading you. I'm not sure. I don't have that answer.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any other questions?
Yeah, in my opinion, I really would like to see master plan or city plan of the whole city of Socorro to see designated areas for parks and trails and industrial areas and residential areas because look like the city is growing, still growing as the developers want to grow. Is there anyone that works on the city planning to write some lines on the master plan, like where the park should be, where the residential areas should be, and all good environmental for a good city? Is that possible to have it soon?
Yes, I believe if I'm correct, there's a consultant who's working on that. And if it's not already approved, we could have it very soon.
How soon?
I don't know because I don't know the extent of the work that they're doing at the moment. I don't know if they're almost done or if it's already done.
Because looks like the master plan, I guess the Socorro area, we have like a 60% of the residential and still the 40% undeveloped areas. And in that 40%, I guess from the city commissioners or from the city engineering can decide how the city will look better in that 40% area.
Yes, absolutely. So on the new amendment that was approved recently for Chapter 38, one of the requirements when somebody owns several pieces of land and they're gonna subdivide it in phases, the first thing that we ask for is for a master plan. So when there's a developer, and you're gonna see one very soon, I've been asking for a master plan for the area north of Nuevo Hueco Tanks Road. I heard from the engineer that they're almost done with the master plan for that area. That's gonna show the entire section from Alameda to North Loop. And then from North Loop all the way to the, I guess to the city limit, almost hitting I-10. And then wrapping around, crossing over Nuevo Hueco Tanks all the way to Moon Road. There's a developer who owns all that land. He's gonna include all that in the master plan. And that's gonna give us a good picture of how we're gonna lay out parts, how we're gonna lay out the walking trails, etc. Well, a walking trail, I don't know if you understand the concept behind that is, it's like having a linear park. It's like having a park, but instead of having it concentrated in one area, it's a linear park. So, for example, when somebody presents a new subdivision, if they're required, for example, half an acre to be dedicated for park, we're gonna ask them for that half an acre to be a walking trail. I don't know if that makes sense. It's the
Yes,
same thing, we're dedicating the land to the city. It's like having additional right of way, but the difference is that the developer will have to improve it and turn it into a bike lane or a walking trail.
is that something that the developers do the decision, or can the city do that decision?
Well, the city, I mean, the city can make that decision if the city wants to move in that direction. Like I said, that's something that we're testing to see if that will mitigate some of the burden of having to maintain so many parks. We're thinking that maybe that's a solution to the problem, and hopefully it'll benefit more public instead of having a concentrated area being used as a park.
What was it that you called it? A lineal park?
Linear
Linear,
park,
linear park?
yes, sir.
So, I'm just trying to, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm just trying to weigh the pros and cons, but a linear park stretched in the form of like walking lanes and so on, if it stretched, for example, just 10 miles, 10 feet wide, well, that square footage, I would think, is more than the parks that we already have, I don't, there's no way for me to do the math right now, but the city still maintains those linear parks, right? Somebody still has to pay for them. So I'm wondering, like, city council and whoever's looking at that, I don't see the cost savings on them. I'm thinking, for example, a linear park would need asphalt, for example, and concrete for a sidewalk or not, maybe some trees and so on. Trees need to be watered, so on and so forth, so I don't know if there's really a cost savings on it.
Yeah, so that's a good observation, Mr. Estrada. To give you, and I'm going back to this part because this is the part that has been affecting us the most. And what I mean by that is by the irrigation system. If you look at the size of this park, this is about 9 acres. This is a massive piece of land. So just imagine, I'm not sure how far away the sprinkler systems are from each other, but we need to irrigate the entire 9 acres. Otherwise, you would have little patches of dried sod. Well, you can just imagine the amount of water it takes to irrigate this. As you can see, there's a massive valve inside this little room. There's a big pump, and the valve irrigates the 9 acres. Well, now imagine this little area that you see here. That's a tree. The amount of water that it takes to irrigate a tree, they only have a dripping system. So you're using much less water trying to irrigate a tree than having to irrigate an entire area that is covered with sod. So right away, you can have a good idea where the savings are coming from. You don't have to irrigate the entire land, only concentrated areas that would have a dripping system. But I mean, it would only take a gallon of water per hour versus, the amount of water it would take to irrigate all this. But we're already seeing savings on the irrigation. Also, depending on how the bike lanes would be designed, it'll cut the cost on having to cut all these weeds. So you're saving also on the maintenance. For example, this area that we have here, it's not improved. And Public Works has to go in there every once in a while and pick up loads of trash. Versus if this was an improved area, the maintenance would be minimal. All you have to do is put a random waste basket here and there, couple of trees, dripping system, and the maintenance would be minimal. I don't know if that helped visualize a little bit of where we're saving some of the, I mean,
Yeah.
it only takes one person to go turn off the irrigation system versus having to an entire crew go into a park, do the lawn, pick up the trash, etc. It's a lot more work. We have to spend money on labor, maintenance, irrigation, etc.
I'm following you. Now, that particular part, 9 acres, that is a huge part. I think that ought to be developed.
Yes, it's massive. Yes, sir.
I think it should be developed. All right. Well, the other thing I guess I'll just say is that the linear parks are I think it's for a certain age group. For example, I'd hop on a bike and ride 5 miles, for example, you know, but a different age group, for example, younger families with 3-year-olds, you know, so on, 5-year-olds. It's hard to keep a 2-year-old, for example, on a bike lane. They need that patch of grass or whatever just to sit and run around. It doesn't have to be very big. I'm also of the age where I have the grandchildren and they're young, you know, babies. And sometimes you just want to walk a couple of blocks, you know, maybe half a mile and get to that park. So I like the idea of the linear, but I also like the idea of having a short walk to a park within the subdivision. But I think that's all I can say to this point because I'm not on the financial side of what it's costing to maintain these. So I'm good for now.
Something that I can add in regards with the parks. There are some trees that the roots going down, straight down, and in that area, the water level it should be like between 3 and 4 feet. We can maintain, take care of those trees for 3 or 4 years at least, and then they will get watered by themselves because the roots going down, but the water level is that something that you can consider? Like pines, like desert trees?
Yes, that's something that's on the works. We are looking into an ordinance to regulate landscaping. That's one of the things that we are looking at because there's a number of trees that the city would like to prohibit, to include cottonwoods, elm trees. Those trees, not only are they obnoxious, they're also dangerous. The reason is because we have found on several occasions where the roots will go into the sewer systems, they'll clog them up, or they'll lift the sidewalks where they pop the concrete up. We're trying to not allow those kind of trees. There's been occasions where elm trees, for some reason, they've been rotting, they break, and then they fall on a house or a vehicle or even a person. They're very big and heavy, and we don't think it's a good idea to allow them for a walking trail. We would, and like I said, that's something that we are looking into to see if we can get a specific list of the trees that will be allowed.
Okay.
Does anybody want to make a motion?
This motion is for the approval of that subdivision, right?
Yes.
Yes.
With the caveats that are on there or any other caveats?
No, those are the only things that we need from this developer, and I know that they are in the works. We just don't have them yet because some of these reports, we need to have the approval of the preliminary plat in order for them to continue working on this. If the design is accepted by the city, then they can continue working on this proposed
Right.
design.
Real quick, Mr. Terrazas, that 2.5%, the way that the charter is worded, does that 2.5% go to the Parks Department or the Parks budget, or does it go to the general fund?
I believe it goes to the general fund, and from there, the city will administer as it needs.
Okay. Now, from what I can remember in earlier, we did have one, if I remember correctly. Well, anyways, the motion, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to approve it with staff recommendation as well as the caveat that instead of it going to the general fund, that it go to the parks budget.
Okay.
I have a motion to approve by,
uh,
with staff recommendations by, as well as a caveat to go to the general fund by Mr. Enrique Cisneros.
Correction, that the 2.5% that's collected go to the parks budget.
Can
have a
can
mo-
I just ask a real quick question? I'd like, just so I can get a hold of what this is, with that staff recommendation. So I'm looking at that subdivision, and so that 2.5% would go to that lot that's next to that canal, not on that, inside that subdivision? Is that what you were asking, Mr. Cisneros?
Well, the way that I made the motion is that it goes to the Parks Department or the Parks budget. I'll retract my motion if you want to make if you want it to go directly to that park, I'll leave it up to your discretion.
Joe, I have a question for you. Is
to
it
me,
2.5% or 2%?
It should be 2.5%.
2.5. Thank
That's
you.
2.5%.
Thank you. Mr. Cisneros, are you going to leave your motion or did you want to retract it and start over?
Let me go ahead and retract it. And if Mr. Arroyos would like to make a different motion, I'd like to open up the floor for him.
Go ahead, Mr. Arroyos.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve with that staff recommendation on those, that 2.5%
Park fees.
going to the park fees.
Okay, let me read this back to you. Motion to approve by Mr. Andrew Arroyos with staff recommendations as well as 2.5% going to the park, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I would like to say on a motion.
Well, let me, point of clarification, just so that I can understand it, goes to the Parks Department or go to the park closest to this development?
You mean the Jardín de Flores Park, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, 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 sir.
Going to the Jardín de Flores Park.
Correct. Which is that section right there, and that's the question I have. It was that section that was abutted next to that canal and back of that subdivision, right? The existing subdivision?
No, that is the Franklin feeder, the canal the park that they're referring to is this one right here.
Oh, okay. I'm
Those
sorry.
are the- Those are the 9 acres, and the reason we brought it up is because this is the largest park that is really close to this subdivision.
Right.
The area that you're questioning, this is the Franklin feeder. And like I said, this is something that will be improved at a later date in
Right.
coordination with the Water Improvement District.
Okay.
I'm going to repeat. I have a motion made by Mr. Andrew Arroyos to approve with staff recommendations as well as 2.5% going to the Jardín de Flores Park. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion. Also, for the 2% be dedicated as the same park, but also we would like to have from the city of Socorro in the master plan a close park to there and not to the people cross the dangerous street and make some areas destinated to the park before any other development comes.
Unfortunately, I cannot change the motion because it's already been made.
Yeah, I'll give the motion for approval.
You do agree with what Mr. Andrew Arroyo said?
Yes.
David Estrada,
Yes.
Arturo Lafuente,
Yes.
Andrew Arroyos,
Yes, ma'am.
Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carried with all in favor. Item number 6, Planning and Zoning Commissioners Report.
In my opinion, I would like the North Loop have more lights, the stop lights, because there's some areas, crowded areas that we need to wait to get it out and in and out. Yes,
Does anybody have anything else?
I don't have anything, and again, I'd like to apologize for being late today.
It's okay. We're moving
Nothing
on.
to report.
I'm sorry?
Nothing to report.
Okay, we're moving on to item number 7, Planning and Zoning Department Report.
The only thing that I have to report is that the Planning and Zoning Department has been working with Public Works. We're finishing up the sidewalks on Rio Vista. As you remember, it was widened recently. We still have to go back and finish the curbs. And then there's also a number of subdivisions that are coming in. Like I mentioned earlier, we've been asking for walking trails. You're gonna see that term more often, especially on the rezoning land that was rezoned north of Nuevo Hueco Tanks. It looks like that's gonna be a mixture of industrial and commercial properties. We're gonna see, we've been asking for walking trails along both areas. There's gonna be several businesses, new businesses coming in. There's also subdivisions that are coming on other parts of the city, and you're gonna see those coming soon. And like I said, for the most part, we've been asking for walking trails. So that's the only thing that I have to report tonight.
Okay, item number 8, excuse absent commission members.
Before we go to that, can I have a question for Joe? Yeah, and I just want to clarify, did you say that subdivision we looked at last meeting regarding the warehousing and the commercial, did that get approved by city council?
No, you're gonna see that subdivision coming soon. So what was approved by council, or coming Thursday, I'm gonna present the rezoning, same thing that you saw. Okay, it's gonna go to council this coming Thursday. After that, when the rezoning is approved, the developer is gonna come back with a subdivision plat. That's what you're gonna see on the very soon. I don't know if it's gonna be on the following meeting, but it looks like that project is moving really fast. you're gonna see that area is gonna be developed in phases because the land is so large. It's gonna be developed in phases. Where you're gonna be there's gonna be several plats that are gonna come before you, and on all of them, we're asking for connectivity for a bike route. That's what's coming soon. You might also see the master plan, the master plan that I described earlier. As soon as we get it, we're gonna make arrangements to put it on the agenda so you can also provide feedback and recommendations on the master plan as well. So before you see the subdivision plat, you should be able to see the master plan for all that area.
Okay, repeating item number 8, excuse absent commission members.
Has anyone heard from Ernest Gomez? Has he called in? Is there a reason why he hasn't been calling in?
When I contacted him, he said he was going to try to make it to the meeting.
How many weeks or how many meetings has he been absent in a row?
Sergio, do you have the count of how many times Mr. Gomez has been absent?
I don't have it right off the top of my head, but he hasn't been here for the past 3 or 4.
The last 3 consecutive 3 or 4 meetings he hasn't been here.
No, sir.
Yes.
Isn't there like a 3 consecutive meeting maximum that someone can be absent?
If they're unexcused, yes. But if you voted to excuse them, pues obviously not. I just don't remember how the actual vote went for the last ones.
I think the last one, it was unexcused.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have a count on how many unexcused he has?
Run
We
that
can
by
go
me.
back and look and see how many he. Well, on the last meeting, I'm looking at the meeting minute from the previous meeting. It looks like they were not excused.
It was not excused last meeting.
Correct.
Would be the second one, but I don't remember the third. The going back to the meetings, I don't remember. But I last meeting, I said that there's a couple of people who would really like to be on this zoning board. They would, I think, be great contributors, and I'm going to make a motion to not excuse.
I have a motion made by David Estrada to not excuse. Do I have a second?
A second emotion.
I have a second by Mr. Arturo Lafuente. Mr. David Estrada,
Yes.
Mr. Andrew Arroyos,
Yes.
Mr. Arturo Lafuente,
Yes.
and Mr. Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carried, all in favor. Item number 9, consider and take action on adjournment.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Enrique Cisneros to adjourn, and second by Mr. David Estrada. I'm sorry. Mr. David Estrada,
Yes.
Arturo Lafuente,
Yes.
Andrew Arroyos,
Yes.
Enrique Cisneros.
Yes, ma'am.
Motion carried, all in favor. The meeting is adjourned at 6:55 p.m.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank
Guys.
You too. Everybody, have a good night.